we ask the same 5 questions each week, providing you with chewable bits of expertise. I'm your host, Sarah Scudder, print procurement guru. I run Real Sourcing Network, a print procurement tech startup that leverages technology to provide companies with an innovative and painless way to buy high quality print for less. So today, our guest is a friend of mine named Dave Stowe, who's actually joining us from the East Coast. So dinner time for him. And Dave and I have become friends over the COVID last couple years, and he attends our regular happy hours, and it's been really great to get to know him. So Dave, super excited to have you with us today. So I always like to kick off our show making it a little personal and fun. So I'm going to ask if you could share a couple random non-business related fun facts about yourself.
Okay, yeah. Well, thank you very much, Sarah, for inviting me, and to Procurement Foundry as well for hosting this. I'm glad to be on the show. Kind of some fun facts, I guess, randomly. My background here is the outdoors. I do like the outdoors quite a bit. This is a real forest, or it's a picture of a real forest, I should say, here where I live in Connecticut. Some fun facts in addition to enjoying the outdoors. My wife and I have had the fortunate opportunity to live around the country. Beautiful country. We've lived as far west as Phoenix, Arizona, and into Michigan and Indiana and Chicago areas. So quite a bit of moving around the country. We also have, maybe to tee that off, we have 5 children. So our children have been born in different states, and they're now living in different states. So it's all very good. And it's something that we enjoy. So we get out and hike a lot. We do it also in the wintertime too. We like the outdoors as well. So glad to be on the show. Thanks, Sarah.
I'm going to call you our forest man. I think of you in the outdoors when I see your background. And I'm the oldest of 4, so my parents were very busy as well. I can appreciate growing up in a big family.
Good deal.
So Dave, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your current role?
Sure. So I right now have my own consulting firm called Adventus Consulting. And for a number of years, I've been in the procurement, sourcing, and supply chain area. And I've enjoyed it quite a bit. One of the things that I've learned is most companies, matter of fact, probably all companies nowadays, really depend on their suppliers to meet their business goals. And, from when I got into procurement and sourcing over 20 years ago to now, it's changed quite a bit. But the core thing that I believe in, and one of the things I try to do with myself and my clients and the teams I work with, is really to think about how do you create value through strong supplier relationships. And it's in those type of relationships where innovative ideas come from, to attack and address issues around not just cost, but also around product design or service design, or dealing with issues around risk and mitigating that risk. And so I started my firm a couple of years ago, really with that kind of intent of how do you drive and create value through those strong relationships. And in a corporate buying situation, it can become very complex, even for modest sized companies up to the very large companies. And it's in that area where there's a lot of confusion sometimes in the procurement function or the sourcing function, and frustration set in the companies. And we have to step back sometimes and take a look at the processes, the systems, the people. How are we structured? How are we organized? And how do we really want to engage with our suppliers? So that's what I enjoy doing. And that's how I founded my firm. And I work predominantly in the life science industry, but I also have worked in other industries. Really, anytime I think more of those emerging to mid-sized companies that I work with are dealing with some very challenging issues from time to time that are really supplier based. And it might be not just the suppliers, but how their company interacts with the suppliers. So that's my firm and my focus in this area here.
Yeah, and I always, whenever I see anything pharma related, I think of you. You're kind of my go-to pharma guy if I have anything that comes up in that space. So Dave, tell me about one person, mentor, coach, or boss that helped you most in your career, and how did they help you?
Sure. So about 20 plus years ago, I got into procurement. I I just graduated from the MBA program, and I also had a master's in industrial engineering. And so I took a job with a company that's now part of Honeywell. And I had a boss, great guy, who sat me down really almost the first week, and we talked about a number of things. And he brought up more his core philosophy of operating, leadership issues, right? How to interact with him in terms of constructive conflict, but also executing, getting things done, taking initiative, always being honest about your work, and trying to find, creative ways to solve problems, really more creativity over capital. And he was a dynamic leader. And I thought about that now as you've asked me that question, because it's one of those things where I think if I step back and look at that experience that I had well over 20 years ago, it really formed the foundation of getting in not just to the function of procurement and sourcing, but also thinking about how to interact with a lot of different stakeholders. It's not just people that you might have on your team, but it's the suppliers, it's the business owners, even thinking about the customer viewpoint of the company you're with. And so it's things like that I take, now to heart, and thinking about that experience and sitting down much younger in my life, but not knowing how to deal in a big corporation. And I think that's the catch sometimes, is you can get into even a modest sized company has a lot of people and a lot of different ways that people interact. And especially today's day and age with technology, very virtual oriented world that we live in, it's still important to build relationships, and thinking about how those relationships are built has got to be part of every person's job, especially in a procurement and sourcing role.
Yeah, absolutely. What is the most innovative thing that you've seen in your space, which we'll call life sciences, in the past 12 months?
Well, if you think about the impact that COVID has had on our whole society, 12 months ago, we were just starting to really understand that there was this thing called a virus that was unknown, and it was a novel virus, and it was part of the corona family, viruses. And so we as a industry started to really see this. And it was really nice to see how quickly we used information and share that information, first of all, to explain what the molecular structure was, the DNA structure of this virus, and then to go work between the government and private industry to think about the vaccine. And normally in life sciences, especially pharmaceuticals, to get a drug designed, developed, approved by the FDA is years. And, it's very frustrating, especially for those folks who have dealt with, long-term health issues around cancer or heart disease, diabetes, and other rare diseases too, where it's just been, challenging to get some type of approved therapeutic treatment. And so what's happened in the last 12 months, I think, has been this Operation Warp Speed, or this viewpoint that we can really work together between industry and government to try to solve very critical healthcare issues in a very safe manner, effective manner, but also expeditiously. And that, to me, just shows the power of collaboration. It shows the power of obviously being very focused analytically on what you're doing, but having a willingness to work with different people, and maybe not even knowing right away who you're working with, but having this spirit of working together. And it's working not just in the US, but across, the globe. And that's the other thing that's really kind of impressive, is if you look at life sciences, I think there's a lot of questions now. People are going to ask, why does it take so long to have a drug developed? Is there a way that we, again, can be safe and effective and efficient in how we develop these drugs? And technology has played a huge part in how that information is used and shared across suppliers, across the business itself, across the scientific community, and across the regulatory community. So it's phenomenal stuff that's going on right now in the life science space.
Yeah, Dave, and a testament to that, my parents, who are in their 60s, just got their second vaccines today. So in their community, 65 and older has now been approved to get the vaccine. So I haven't received the text message or the phone call that they've got the vaccine yet. I'm not sure what time their appointment was today, but I'll be chatting with them this evening. But that's a great testament and example of that partnership that you described.
Right.
So we know you're a forest man and that you have 5 kids and you've traveled a lot, but what is one unique thing that we don't know about you?
I would say I don't know if I've talked a lot about maybe more my passion for the history of this country. And I've been digging into it for many years. And even recently, with a lot of things going on in this country, it's good to kind of step back and recognize a number of things over 250 or 300 years. And so I'm always fascinated that I learn a lot about this country, especially that I've lived around the country. And, now living out in the New England area, there is definitely a strong tie to understanding our colonial times, how we came here, what happened, the country itself. But I've also been fortunate to live out west, and I think about out there dealing more with the Native American nations, if you will, and understanding their backgrounds and how we come together as two different cultures or multiple cultures, I should say. But a lot of good things have come about this, I think, for a lot of people, and so I enjoy doing that, and I try to find the positive in a lot of different people that I meet and cultures, because it's just fascinating. So maybe those are things that I just don't always talk about. It's sometimes a little too business focused. So I'm happy to talk at length, but it's also nice to just really appreciate the neighborhoods and the communities that we live in.
Yeah, and I think YouTube has, you talked about the improvements in technology. I think YouTube has become a great resource for people who want to learn. There's a lot of really cool things about history that you can check out there.
Yeah, exactly. Technology has given us all those options to really learn and dig deep.
So, Dave, my closing question for you today is, what is one piece of advice that you can give people crawling up the ranks?
I would say the most important thing is be willing to build relationships, and be willing to build relationships at all levels and across a lot of different backgrounds of suppliers and people. When I first got into procurement, as I mentioned, with Allied Signal, now Honeywell, I was actually working with international sourcing. And at that time, we were trying to figure out what's going on in the marketplace in Singapore and in Korea and Taiwan and even China and Japan, as well as in Europe for aerospace. But when I step back and I look at that, it's how you built those relationships that really matter, because we can definitely do RFPs, we can do RFQs, we can negotiate all we want, but it really comes down to two people, two groups of people, two entities coming together and making a deal. And sure, we're going to have legal terms, we're going to have a lot of other aspects that we need to think about, but it's going to come down to, can we pick up the phone and can Sarah, you and I have a discussion and we can work things out. And if we feel comfortable and trust each other and we can do that, it'll be great. So I would encourage anybody in any aspect of business, but especially in sourcing and procurement, be thinking about the relationships you build and build them person to person more than just business to business.
Yeah, and Dave, I think one of the things when I get asked about, some of the shifts or changes that are happening in the industry, I always talk about the shift from I to we. And I think that's really important for procurement to really focus on and think about that collaboration aspect.
I would agree 100% there. And those are very important. And I think it doesn't matter if you're in your 20s, your 30s, or you're at my point in my career, there's always a new relationship to be built. There's always sometimes relationships that might go sideways to be straightened out. And there's an opportunity there. And really, that's the beauty, I think, and why I really enjoy what I do here.
Yeah. Well, Dave, thank you so much for coming on our show today, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you very much, Sarah. I appreciate it. And thanks to the Procurement Foundry.
Bye.